You may be seated. The Lord left with his disciples one commandment above all. He commanded us to love one another. And in the icon of the apostles, Peter and Paul, whom we celebrate today, we see them embracing in Christian love, upholding the church, sometimes shown in physical form. They hold a small church between the two of them, as we understand them to be the pillars, the paramount apostles upon whom is founded the church itself. And yet we know that they spent much of their lives and ministries in opposition, in conflict. Peter preached to the Jews, and Paul preached to the Gentiles. Peter preached the importance of observing the law, of holding, in some sense at least, to the tradition of the Hebrew people. And Paul preached a radical freedom from the law. And in practical terms, they came to be in conflict. Not that either of them ceased to preach Christ, but in the understanding of how we as human beings, how the individual people who were under their care should carry out their lives. There was conflict. Now we in the church, we few, we many who are part of this body, we too are called to love of one another, and we too find ourselves in conflict. And sometimes the conflicts are small, petty things. Someone sat in someone else's pew. Someone didn't say hello, and the other person is offended. These things are easy to solve. A little humility, a small apology, a little repentance, and all is made right. But sometimes we have substantial disagreements. When do we fast? How do we fast? When do we take communion? When should we come to church? Who should be allowed to receive the sacred mysteries? And about these matters, within the church walls and without, we find ourselves fighting with each other. What is notable about Saints Peter and Paul, however, is not that they were in conflict, but that they were reconciled in martyrdom. When it came to the test, both of them held fast to Christ. They would not deny him, they would not renounce him, and they went to their deaths in witness of the love of the Lord. And in their final days in Rome, before the emperor, they laid aside the disagreements. They were reconciled. The church depicts them and celebrates them today, not to say that what they preach was not true and right, that their disagreements even did not matter, but to say that the love of Christ who calls them together was more important. For us, there is a simple test when we are in conflict with one another. When we disagree, when we have something that we must say, a point we must make, when we are so certain we are right and the other person is wrong, we must ask ourselves, is my zeal about Christ? Or is it about me? Am I building up the Lord, or am I building up myself? Because as human beings, we love to be right. We love to win. We love to teach and instruct and correct others. But this love is born of pride and the love of self. And in this, we sin. What we see in the apostles today is the other kind of love. They are zealous for Christ. They rejoice, they marvel, they weep at the beauty and the love that the Lord has shown to us. And therefore, when they see error, when they see deviation, when they see damage done to the flock of Christ, they defend the Lord. They affirm and confess the truth of the gospel. And therefore sometimes, through misunderstanding, through the realities of different people, different times, different places, different calls, they came into conflict. But at the end, they laid it aside. They embraced the weakness, the brokenness, the humiliation of martyrdom. They held fast to Christ, and Christ held fast to them and restored them to peace. We are called to the same, to lay aside pride, to lay aside the building up and glorification of ourselves, and to love the Lord above all, and in our brothers, in our sisters around us, to see the Lord and to love one another with the love of Christ. With this love, let us stand, let us continue the divine liturgy. Amen.